Bible recording of Moses and the Exodus. It's not a story. It's a real thing. It happened. Just like everything in the Bible's real. It's lots of people call them stories, but it's the real deal. If I can find it, it's eluding me. Well, Joshua's Joshua's not in my Bible. There it is. Moses exited when they come out of Egypt. You know, most of us know what happened. They wandered around for 40 years trying to get to the Jordan River. Basically, that's it. They're trying to get to the Jordan River. All right, they've got there at this point right here, and I'm gonna pick it up. But the first verse says, "After the death of Moses," but I'm gonna back up one chapter in Deuteronomy 34, verse 5, and so verse 5, Deuteronomy 34, 5. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in the valley of the land of Moab, over against Beth Peor. But no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. Who buried Moses? He buried him. God buried him. So he said. He buried him. And nobody knew where he was buried. But now I want you to listen to the next verse, what it says about Moses. Was Moses sick? Anybody know? Did Moses have anything wrong with him? What did the next verse say? Verse 7. And Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes was not dim. He could see. He didn't have to wear glasses. Nor his natural force abated. In other words, he was a strong man. He was strong as he was when he was a young man, probably stronger. God had blessed him. And Moses died there in that land. Does anybody know why Moses died? Huh? What did he do? Struck the rock. Yeah, more than one time. And this is a lesson I'm going to say it's a prescription on how to get rich and how to do the right thing. It's what I'm going to try to get through to you. Now, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that Joshua 1, the Lord spake unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying. So we find out there in verse 1, Joshua was a preacher. Moses is a preacher. Moses, my servant, is dead. He come back and tells him, he said, Moses dead. Now therefore rise and go over this Jordan, thou and all the people unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. So he's reminding them that Moses would have got the same thing, really. But you gonna get it. Every verse 3, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. He said the same thing to Moses. You do the right thing, you're going to get exactly what Moses got. And everywhere they tread, and it gives a description of the property that they receive in the book of Joshua, and all the countries that they defeated. And here in verse 4, it says, from the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river of Euphrates, and all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea toward the going down of the sun shall be your coast. A lot bigger than what Israel is today. Now, I don't have a map of that. It's evidently a bigger area than what's covered today. And each one of those tribes of Israel got a certain partial of this land. And you know how they got that land? How it was divided up? They drew lots. And that's in this book. I probably won't get to it tonight, but they drew lots on which tribe got what. And it gives a description of the land, and each one of them had there was 12 pieces of paper in that partial, and it was written on there the description of the land. And I don't know. Let me think who drew the lots. Anyhow, the man might have been Joshua. He reached in and drew the lot, and when it come out, and it had like Gad, and this is what you got. And he read it, and everybody agreed. It went on down to the 12 tribes. That's how they got to land that was divided amongst the 12. Verse 5, there shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life, as I was with Moses. So I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. He's telling him right here, he says, fear not. You're a man of God. I'm going to take care of you. And he said, don't worry about any man standing before you, because I'm with you. And the verse next 6 says, be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people thou shalt divide for an inheritance the land which I swear unto the fathers to give them. So you see, Joshua's the one that divided land. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe and do according to all the law. This is the prescription for a perfect life, if you will, what he's giving right here. Which Moses, my servant, commanded thee, turn not from the right hand or the left, that thou mayest prosper wheresoever thou goest. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, part of the prescription, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe and do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee wheresoever thou goest. So he's encouraging Joshua. And back to Moses. Has anyone in here ever made a mistake? Huh? Has anyone in here ever not made a mistake? Let me put it that way. Moses made a mistake when he struck that rock. And he paid for his mistake. And we say, well, you know, that's pretty harsh, ain't it? Well, he didn't follow what God told him to do. God told him exactly what to do, and he didn't do it. How many times have I not done what God said to do? I just use myself more times than one, and we see the penalty for that right there. Moses died in that land, and here in this land right here where Joshua's getting the I'll put it this way, he's becoming president of the nation of Israel. If we put it in terms of the United States, he's the leader of Israel, and he's God's chosen man. That's the difference. He's not the people. He's God's chosen man, and that's lots of difference. And as long as he does what Joshua, and same as we, as long as we follow God's instructions, God's going to stay with him. But when it's kind of about like an old mule plowing down that fur. That mule gets to the right or the left. The old farm boys G's to the right and hauls left. You know, you get him back in the middle of that fur. You got to stay hitched up, and you got to stay in that fur, just like Joshua is right here And it tells him not to bear to the right or to the left, the right hand or to the left. So stay straight. That's what he said. In verse 10, then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, pass through the host and command the people, saying, prepare your victual, for within 3 days you shall pass over Jordan and go to in to possess the land, which the Lord your God giveth you to possess it. And then he says, and to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh spake Joshua, said. Now these were the three, or what you want to call them, this side of the Jordan. He gave them land on the side of the Jordan they were on. And he says unto them, he says, remember the word which Moses, thy servant the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God hath given you rest and hath given you this land. He's to remind them that, hey, God gave you this land. And he says, this is a commandment. He says, your wives, your little ones, and your cattle shall remain in the land which Moses gave you on this side of Jordan. But, he says, ye shall pass before your brethren, armed all the mighty men with valor, and help them. He says, you leave everything behind, all your children, your wives, your cattle, everything that you have. And he said, you go help, you go into battle, war with these other men. And he says, verse 15, until the Lord hath given your brethren rest, as he hath given you, and they also have possessed the land which the Lord your God giveth them, then you shall return in the land of your possession, enjoy it, which Moses the Lord's servant gave you on this side of Jordan toward the sun rising. And they answered Joshua, saying, all that thou commandest us we will do, and whithersoever thou sendest us we will go. And in other words, they doing what God wants them to do. He said, Lord, where you want me to go? He said, we're going to go. We're going to fight for Israel. And now also 17, according as we hearken to Moses in all things, so we shall hearken to thee. Only the Lord thy God be with thee, as he was with Moses. Whosoever he be. Now listen to this. If you don't follow orders, listen to what this verse says is going to happen. And that should be happening more so in America than it is. That it ain't even happening. Whosoever he be that doeth rebel against thy commandment, and will not hearken to the words in all that thou commandest him, he shall be put to death. Huh? Only be strong and of good courage. He said, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, he said, they're going to be put to death. God put Moses to death, I reckon. He died there in that land and buried in that sepulchre. They don't know where. Only God knows where it was at. I got another question for you. Now they're going into across the Jordan River. Who knows how they're going to cross that river? Anybody? How many boats they got? They going to build any boats? Huh? Read the scripture. That water is. I'm no country. Well, I remember when Sabine River, when Toledo Bend wasn't there, Sabine River would be from hill to hill. In other words, Alabama. It'd be from one hill to the other hill, water as far as you could see. And that's the way the Jordan River was right here. It's harvest time. It's from hill to hill, Alabama. But listen to what God tells them to do. Tells that priest, if I can find it. Sarah may have to help me. Verse, let me see, maybe it's in chapter 3. And Joshua rose early in the morning, and they removed on. That ain't it. 9. Yeah, this is where he the priest takes a. Let me just read it. Now therefore, take verse 12, 3:12. Take 12 men out of the tribe of Israel, out of every tribe a man, and it shall come to pass as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon a heap. There's where in Exodus, in the first crossing, this is the second crossing. The first crossing, they crossed the Red Sea. Who parted the waters there? God parted the waters. I think Moses commanded it, and God parted the waters, and they went across on dry land there. Y'all stay with me. I'm trying to make a point. They went across on dry land there. All right. They wandered around 40 years in the desert hunting the Jordan River. Just put it like that, and they couldn't find it. Well, they finally found it. Moses is dead. Now they commanded Joshua to take them over the Jordan River. Well, I can just see Joshua walking up there, and like me, God, how am I going to get them across that? And he gave them a prescription right here. He said, tell them priests what to do. Well, they got that ark, and I heard a preacher preach this. That ark's about as high as this table right here. It's about 2 foot wide and 2 foot each way with like a 4-foot gold top of it. And they got that ark, carrying that ark, and he tells them to follow behind that ark a half a mile, or about a half a mile, see, and 3,600 feet. There it says in verse 4, around 36, yet there shall be a space between you and it about 2,000 cubits by measurement. Come not near unto it, that you may know that the way that which you must go, for you have not passed this way hitherto. In other words, they going across on you. They were seeing new ground, wasn't they? He said, I hadn't seen none of this before. He said, you're going to go see new ground. Well, anyhow, they told, when them priests stepped in that water, verse 15, as they that bare the ark were come to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bare the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for Jordan overfloweth all its banks all the time of the harvest. That's where us getting at the waters from hill to hill. You can't see the bank on the other side, probably. I'll just put it that way. Long way to swim, and it's swift water, I'm sure. And the waters which came down from above stood and rose up on a heap very far from the city, Adam, that is beside Zartan, and those that came down toward the sea of the plain, even the salt sea fell and were cut off, and the people passed over right against Jericho. And the priests that bare the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan, and all Israel, Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed even clean over Jordan. So we see there that they crossed Jordan on dry ground, just like they did in Exodus. Why do you think God let them do that? You can go on and read there was 2 that went over, old people. Who went? Everybody else died. Joshua and Caleb. They got to go in. Everybody else had done died off. The ones that got the younger generation, they had, I don't know how old they was, had to be like 40, 58, no more than 60, somewhere no more than 60 years old. Huh? Yeah. And anyhow, they got to go in, but when they got to go in, I'd have to go back and read it. All those they were unclean. Every one of them were unclean. All the men folks had to go through circumcision. And they had a time of healing and all that before they could go into the land. After they went in, they had to get cleaned up. And then after they got in there, you can read on about that, about the lady of the night put them up in the house with two spies. What happened there? The king found out, and he sent them down there. He said, "You go get them people. We're gonna kill them." Just putting it like Molly. Well, they went down there, and she lied. Just putting in Molly. She said, "They're not here." She'd put them up on the roof and hid them. And then after they left and went out the gates shut. She let them down, but they made a if you will, a covenant with her. She said, "You're not," asked them not to harm her family, and they didn't. It tells in there that they carried them all, went in and got them, burnt the city, and took them back to the land with them. And her and her family lived with the Israelites. Rahab. We could go on and on. It's a good lesson, but it's a prescription, if you will. If we follow God's orders, we can't lose. It's just that simple. We cannot lose. We got to stay as He gives. We can't bear to the right or left. You got to stay in that straight and narrow way. And I know it's hard to do, but sometimes when we get out of the cinches, hey, we'll get jerked. When you rub your leg, bro, you're gonna trace it. You're gonna step back in the right direction. And that's what Dad and them let them old mules do. They get out of the traces. They just when it rubbed raw, hey, they figure out how to get that foot over. Well, that's what we got to do. We got to keep it straight, not get out of the traces. That's all I have tonight. Not much. But read the whole chapter of Joshua. It's a good chapter to read. It really show you what God can do. He don't have to have nobody. All he needs is somebody to follow His orders. That's even today. We follow His orders. We're in the straight. We're good. Yeah, to make my point, when I can't do it, Joey can probably go there with me. When I can't do it, then I say, well, maybe I need to call on God and see if He can help. That's where that's where I fell at. I'm a man. I try to get it done myself, but we are always rely on God, and He'll do it for us. Robert, you don't take prayer requests? You can hear a lot better than I can. And you can close when we get through.